I need my intro music fade in. Something tense and cinematic.
Dun dun dun!
Tense and cinematic.
Okay, you want to start anytime soon?
October 4th, 1957. It's a Friday night. Americans are going about their evenings, watching TV, putting kids to bed, maybe cracking a cold one. And then the news breaks. The Soviet Union has just launched something into orbit. Something that is right now flying over American soil. Invisible to the naked eye, but if you had a radio receiver and tuned it just right, you could hear it.
Wow, that's actually kind of eerie.
Eerie from Eerie?
Eerie, keep eerie strange. I don't know why I'm singing now. Can we please carry on?
You didn't even open your monster yet.
I know.
That little beep was Sputnik, a 23-inch metal ball hurling around Earth at 18,000 miles per hour, and it changed everything.
Welcome to Time Tellers, where history becomes personal. I'm Renee.
And I'm Dan, and today we're going to space.
I mean, kind of. Metaphorically, we are staying in these chairs.
Speak for yourself. I've been training.
You have not.
I've been eating freeze-dried ice cream. Same thing.
Totally. Today, we are talking about the space race, that wild, decades-long competition between the United States and the Soviet Union to see who could stake a claim in the heavens first. It's got everything, folks. Politics, science, tragedy, triumph, and some of the most audacious human achievement in history.
Now, fair warning up front. This is an overview episode. We're covering the full arc of the space race from Sputnik to the moon landing, and that means we're moving fast. A lot of incredible stories are going to get one sentence that deserves an entire episode.
Which is actually by design because, and we're very excited about this as mentioned earlier, we are planning a full deep dive series dedicated entirely to the Apollo program. Individual missions, the people behind them, the near disasters, the science, all of it.
So think of today as the trailer. We're setting the stage so that when we get into Apollo specifically, you already understand the world it was born into.
Consider this your space race primer. It's also one of the most dramatic stories of the Cold War, and when you really dig in, it's way more complicated and more human than the textbooks ever let on, like all history.
To understand the space race, you have to understand where it came from, and it came from the ashes of World War II.
Yes.
Specifically from a castle in Germany called, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but you'll be able to read it. Where a team where a team of Nazi scientists had been developing the most terrifying weapon the world had ever seen, the V-2 rocket.
The V-2. Oh, I do know this one. Yes, I do, because I know way too much about World War II. Those were the rockets Hitler was launching at London, right?
Exactly. The V-2 was the first long-range ballistic missile. It traveled faster than the speed of sound, hit without any warning, and there was absolutely nothing you could do to stop it. Over 3,000 of them landed on London and Antwerp, and the man behind them was a 30-something engineer named Wernher von Braun.
I've heard that name before, many a time.
You have. He becomes one of the most important people in the story. He also is one of the most morally complicated figures. Von Braun was a rocket genius. He was also a member of the Nazi Party and the SS, and his rockets were built using forced labor from concentration camps. People died building them.
That's heavy. And yet, he became a hero of American space exploration. Yes, he did.
He does, and that tension never fully goes away. When Germany fell, both the Americans and the Soviets were racing to grab German rocket scientists and their technology. The U.S. got von Braun and most of his team under a secret program called Operation Paperclip, which we also had an episode on.
First season, I think?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. Are we on our third season yet? I don't even know.
No, I call that the seasons I have starting in July.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay. Continue.
The first one in July will be season 3.
Gotcha. We're going by a school district calendar.
No, I'm going by when we started.
Oh, okay.
The Soviets got the factories and the technical documents and their own brilliant engineer, a man named Sergei Korolev.
He's the less commonly known name, especially for Americans.
Most people don't, and that's by design. For decades, the Soviet government kept his identity completely secret. He was just referred to as the chief designer. They were terrified the U.S. would try to assassinate him.
They thought we'd assassinate a rocket scientist?
Renee, this was the Cold War. People were paranoid about everything.
Fair enough. So you've got von Braun on our side, Korolev on theirs, two geniuses, two superpowers, two massive egos at the national level. This is basically the world's highest stakes science fair.
That is actually a perfect way to describe it. So back to October 1957. Sputnik launches and America loses its mind.
How bad was the panic?
Senate Majority Leader Lyndon Johnson said it felt like, and I'm paraphrasing here, a shotgun blast of humiliation. The idea that the Soviets had the technology to put something into orbit meant, by extension, they had the technology to put a nuclear warhead anywhere on Earth.
So it wasn't just about space, it was about missiles.
Exactly. Orbit a satellite, you can orbit a bomb. Americans started building backyard bomb shelters. Congress went into emergency sessions. The word Sputnik entered the American vocabulary overnight as shorthand for crisis.
And then the Soviets did it again a month later, didn't they?
Yep, with the very original Sputnik 2. November 3rd, 1957. And this time they sent up a passenger.
Laika, the little dog.
Laika, a stray they'd found on the streets of Moscow. She became the first living creature to orbit Earth.
And she didn't make it back, right? That still ticks me off a little bit. It makes me sad.
She didn't. The mission was never designed for her to return. The Soviets didn't reveal that publicly for decades. They claimed she'd been humanely euthanized before her oxygen ran out. The truth was that she died from overheating a few hours into the flight when the thermal control system failed.
That's heartbreaking. She had no idea she was making history.
She's actually still up there, technically.
That's true.
Her orbital trajectory decayed in 1958, and she re-entered the atmosphere. But for a moment, she was the loneliest creature in the universe.
Okay. I need a second. That's tragic. Okay. What did America do?
We panicked.
Yeah. Yep.
Then we tried to launch our own satellite on live television. It was called Vanguard. On December 6, 1957, cameras rolling, the rocket rose about 4 feet, lost thrust, and fell back down in a spectacular fireball on the launch pad.
On live television.
On live television, the press called it Flopnik, Kaputnik, and Stayputnik.
Those are great, and we totally deserve that.
A little bit, yeah. It wasn't until January 31st, 1958 that von Braun's team finally got Explorer 1 into orbit. We were in the race, but we were already behind. Now the question shifted from satellites to something far more daring. Could you actually put a human being up there?
And very important part, survive.
A key part of the question, yes. In April 1959, NASA announced the Mercury 7. 7 military test pilots selected from a pool of 500 candidates to become America's first astronauts. John Glenn, Alan Shepard, Gus Grissom, Scott Carpenter, Gordon Cooper, Wally Schirra, and Deke Slayton.
The Mercury 7. I feel like these guys were very celebrated, like instantly famous.
Overnight celebrities. Life magazine paid them for exclusive rights to their personal stories. They were handsome, brave, crew-cut American heroes at exactly the moment America needed them. There was a whole mystique around them, the idea of the right stuff, this unspoken quality of cool competence under pressure.
But the Soviets beat us again, didn't they?
April 12, 1961. Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. He orbited the Earth in 108 minutes, landed in a field in Russia, and became the most famous person on the planet.
What was he like as a person? Did you know him? Have you met him? I know how old you are.
You're older, so have you? By all accounts, genuinely charming and humble. He was the son of a carpenter and a milkmaid from a tiny village. The Soviets couldn't have cast a better hero if they'd tried. He toured the world after his flight, and crowds turned out everywhere. Paris, London, Cairo. Even people who hated the Soviet Union loved Gagarin.
I often wonder if his backstory was actually factual at all, or if it's just what the Soviets made up to make him look extra good.
Wow.
And, of course, the United States responded by...
3 weeks later, Alan Shepard made it into space on a 15-minute suborbital flight. Not in orbit, just up and back down. America's very careful not to oversell it.
That's like winning the silver medal and calling it a comeback.
Exactly. But here's where things get interesting. 14 days after Gagarin's flight, a young president stood up in front of Congress and made one of the most audacious promises in political history.
Was that JFK? Was that JFK? Sorry. You gave me the caffeine.
Finally, if we are to win the battle that is now going on around the world, between freedom and tyranny. The dramatic achievements in space which occurred in recent weeks should have made clear to us all, as did the Sputnik in 1957, the impact of this invention on the minds of men everywhere who are attempting to make a determination of which road they should take. Since early in my term, our efforts in space have been under review. With the advice of the Vice President, who is chairman of the National Space Council, we have examined where we are strong and where we are not, where we may succeed and where we may not. Now it is time to take longer strides, time for a great new American enterprise, time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth. I believe we possess all the resources and talents necessary, but the facts of the matter are that we have never made the national decisions or marshaled the national resources required for such leadership. We have never specified long-range goals on an urgent time schedule or managed our resources and our time so as to ensure their fulfillment. Recognizing the head start obtained by the Soviets with their large rocket engines, which gives them many months of lead time, and recognizing the likelihood that they will exploit this lead for some time to come in still more impressive successes, we nevertheless are required to make new efforts on our own. For while we cannot guarantee that we shall one day be first, we can guarantee that any failure to make this effort will make us last. We take an additional risk by making it in full view of the world, but as shown by the feat of astronaut Shepard, this very risk enhances our stature when we are successful. But this is not merely a race. Space is open to us now, and our eagerness to share its meaning is not governed by the efforts of others. We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share. I therefore ask the Congress, above and beyond the increases I have earlier requested for space activities, to provide the funds which are needed to meet the following national goals. First, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. We propose to accelerate the development of the appropriate lunar spacecraft. We propose to develop alternate liquid and solid fuel boosters, much larger than any now being developed, until certain which is superior. We propose additional funds for other engine development and for unmanned exploration, explorations which are particularly important for one purpose which this nation will never overlook, the survival of the man who first makes this daring flight. But in a very real sense, it will not be one man going to the moon. We make this judgment affirmatively. It will be an entire nation, for all of us must work to put him there.
John F. Kennedy, May 1961.
In his speech to Congress, yes. And here's what makes this extraordinary. At the time he said it, NASA had put one man in space for 15 minutes. They had never attempted an orbit, let alone a trip to the moon. The technology to get there didn't exist, the rockets didn't exist, the spacesuits didn't exist, and he was saying, we'll do it in 9 years.
Was he just bluffing?
Partly, it was a political calculation. Kennedy understood that the Soviets had a head start on near-Earth orbit, but going to the moon was so ambitious that it essentially reset the competition. By picking a destination that nobody had reached yet, he leveled the playing field.
That's actually really smart. And also, he knew he only had at most 2 terms, so if it didn't work, there wasn't anything he could do about it.
He also said something in a private memo that reveals his true motivation. He told his advisors he wasn't interested in space for its own sake. He wanted a space program that would demonstrate American superiority. which as a historian is fascinating. The entire Apollo program, one of humanity's greatest achievements, was fundamentally driven by propaganda.
Does that make it less impressive?
I've thought about that a lot. I don't think so. Whatever the motivation, the science was real, the engineering was real, and the human courage was absolutely real.
Also, Kennedy, unfortunately, didn't even live to see it.
He didn't. He was assassinated in November 1963. The program continued under Johnson, and then Nixon would be president when it finally succeeded. But it was always called Kennedy's moonshot.
Because he started it. The idea of it.
Okay, this is the moment where I have to remind you that this is an overview, because what we're about to cover in the next few minutes, Apollo 1, Apollo 11, the missions in between, each one of these deserves its own episode, and they're going to get one. But for now, we're sketching the outline.
Save the date, listeners. Apollo series is coming.
Before we get to the triumph, we have to talk about the cost. January 27th, 1967. Astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee are inside the Apollo 1 capsule on the launch pad during a routine ground test. No fuel, no rocket ignition, a simulated countdown.
And then something went very wrong.
A fire broke out inside the capsule. The pure oxygen atmosphere that NASA used made it spread with terrifying speed. The hatch was designed to open inward, which meant the pressure of the fire made it impossible to open. All 3 men died within minutes.
On the ground, not even in space.
On the ground, in front of the launch team, there's nothing anyone could do. It remains the worst disaster in American spaceflight history in terms of lives lost per mission.
What happened afterwards?
NASA stopped. For 20 months, there was no crewed launches. They completely redesigned the capsule, new hatch, new materials, less flammable atmosphere. Some engineers later said the fire, as horrible as it was, forced them to fix problems that would have killed astronauts in space, where there'd be no chance of survival. It may have saved the program.
That's a terrible silver lining.
The worst kind, but it's real. July 16th, 1969. Apollo 11 lifts off from the Kennedy Space Center. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, and the world holds its breath.
Okay, I know this part, but tell it anyways because it deserves to be told. And that's what we do here on Time Tellers. We tell stories of history. Go ahead.
4 days later, the lunar module named Eagle separates from the command module and begins its descent to the surface. And almost immediately, alarms start going off.
Alarms? During the landing?
12:02 alarm. The onboard computer was overloading. Nobody in mission control had ever seen it in a real flight. A 26-year-old software engineer named Jack Garman had stayed late to compile a list of computer alarms and what to do about each one. He was the one who knew, on the spot under pressure, that a 12:02 was okay. The landing could continue.
A 26-year-old kid saved the moon landing.
One of the many unsung heroes in this story. Then, as the Eagle descended, Armstrong looked out the window and realized they're heading for a boulder field. He took manual control and flew the lander, basically on fumes, to find a clear patch. They landed with 17 seconds of fuel remaining.
17 seconds, folks.
Stanley Kubrick could have framed that better. 17 seconds, and then Armstrong's voice crackled over the radio.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
And everyone in mission control just
exploded. Tears, cheering, cigars. Charlie Duke, the capsule communicator, got on the radio and said, and this is his actual quote,
Roger, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
That is so human. I love that.
6.5 hours later, at 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped off the ladder and onto the lunar surface. 500 million people, a fifth of the entire human population, watched it live on television.
One small step for man.
Shut up, he can say it better.
Of mankind.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
He intended to say one small step for a man. The A got lost in the transmission. He was annoyed about that for years.
That would annoy me too. He was annoyed. He just became the first human being to walk on the moon, and he was annoyed at one dropped article, understandably.
He was a perfectionist. Buzz Aldrin stepped out shortly after and described the view as magnificent desolation, which is a much better quote, honestly.
Magnificent desolation. Okay, Buzz.
The Soviets never attempted a crewed lunar landing. Their program had been dealing with disasters of their own. Their giant moon rocket, the N-1, exploded on the launch pad multiple times. After Apollo 11, they quietly pivoted to space stations and claimed that had always been their real goal.
Sure was. Whatever they say. No, I'm just kidding.
And America landed on the moon 5 more times after Apollo 11, the last being Apollo 17 in December of 1972. 12 humans have walked on the lunar surface, all of them American, all of them men, and then we just stopped.
Why? We figured out how to go to the moon, and then we just quit. Hi.
Public interest faded faster than anyone expected. By Apollo 13, which had a near-disaster mid-mission, that we will absolutely be doing a full episode on, the networks had stopped carrying the live broadcasts, the political motivation disappeared. Once we'd won, Congress cut NASA's budget, and the Vietnam War was devouring national attention and money.
That's a little depressing. We have the technology to get to the moon, and we just got bored. Or other things became more important.
Yeah, human nature. But here's the thing, Renee. The space race, for all its Cold War nationalism, gave us something that transcended politics. Satellite communications, GPS, memory foam, scratch-resistant lenses, the technology behind digital cameras, water filtration systems, all of it traces back to NASA research from this era. And most importantly, freeze-dried ice cream.
So the space race is why I can get directions on my phone.
In a very real way, yes.
Okay, Kennedy, fine. So, the space race. 2 superpowers, 1 moon, an almost incomprehensible amount of human ingenuity, bravery, and loss. And, of course, a little dog named Laika, who deserves her own monument somewhere.
There actually is a monument to her in Moscow, outside the military research facility where the program was based, a small statue of a dog on top of a rocket.
Good. She earned it. And look, we know we flew through a lot today. That was intentional. This episode was always meant to be the foundation.
Because coming up, we're going deep. We're planning a full series on the Apollo program specifically. Mission by mission, person by person, the engineers, the astronauts, the families waiting at home, the moments that almost ended everything. There's so much story left to tell.
Apollo 1, Apollo 13. The moonwalks, the ones people have forgotten, we're doing all of it. So, if today got you hooked, just wait out and check our Hidden Figures episode to hold you over. Dan, any final thoughts on today?
I think what gets me about this story every time is that it happened so fast. From that first beep of Sputnik to a human being standing on the moon was 12 years. 12 years of impossible engineering, political pressure, genuine sacrifice, and 12 years of humans refusing to accept that the impossible was, in fact, impossible.
That's why we do this show, honestly. History isn't just dates and facts. It's people who make decisions, brilliant ones and terrible ones, under pressure. And those decisions echo.
They really do. Thanks for listening to Time Tellers, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review, share it with your friends, or just tell someone one fact you learned today and where you learned it from. History spreads one conversation at a time.
Until next time, keep asking questions.
And keep looking up. Bye!